All right, welcome. So let me share a bit of a personal story just to frame my talk and what I want to share with you guys today. I have a private pilot's license, and when I was first learning to fly, I had a rather harrowing experience. I was still a student pilot. I had 20-some hours of flight time behind me, and I had my first cross-country solo flight. So it's the first time I'm getting up alone in the airplane with no instructor and flying hundreds of miles away from home. And the low voltage light, the electric light, came on about 15 minutes into the journey. Now, they don't teach you much about the hardware of the plane when you're learning to fly. I barely know how to fly the thing. So what did I do? Well, my instinct, the first thing I did was tap the light. That didn't change anything. You don't like the reading, so question the instrument. So after that, my instinct is check all of my other instruments. So one by one, I looked at every other instrument on my control panel. And the altimeter says, well, you're not losing altitude. There's no problem. Everything's fine. And my navigation aid said, you're perfectly on course. You're not drifting at all. There's no problem here. Everything's fine. Right? My airspeed indicator, speed's great. You're not losing speed. Nothing's wrong. Nothing to worry about. One by one, every other instrument on that control panel said everything's fine. So I just let them kind of outvote the low voltage light, right? I said, yeah, it must not be that big of a problem, right? Nothing else is reporting an anomalous reading, so I'll just ignore it. That was a horrible mistake, really horrible mistake. I nearly crashed the plane that day. I learned a valuable lesson. Who would have thought the low voltage light, it's actually tuned into different information than all of the other instruments. And after I fortunately landed, there was a bit of a drama in between there, but I got down safely. And I realized, you know what? We do this all the time in organization. And organizations has been a passion of mine for a long time. We do this all the time. Right? We humans, when we show up in an organization, we become the instruments. We become the sensors for that organization's reality. And we tune in and sense different things. We have different backgrounds, different talents, different roles. We sense different things. And there's often really critical data sensed by one lone person or a minority. Right? And they often get outvoted. We'll hear a leader say, well, I just don't see it. As if that's a valid argument for why that other person might not actually see something. And we do this all the time. And this is really core to my journey. I've been in organizations. I've started a few now, but before that, when I worked in organizations, I was left really feeling like my full capacity as a human to sense reality, to be an instrument for this organization's flight, wasn't fully utilized. And how many of us walk into organizations, our organizations that we work within today in the world, and feel like your full capacity, everything you can sense and perceive and respond to, has somewhere to go. You get to integrate it and use it to help that organization? I think very few. So this started a journey for me. This started a long quest looking for how can I show up in organization today in a way that I get to use my full capacity, and to do so without dominating and limiting somebody else from using their full capacity. And fast forwarding a bit, that search brought me to what I now call exquisite organization. A search for exquisite organization. I think that's not a word we often hear paired with organization. And that brought me to a specific method that evolved over many years as I continued looking for better and better ways to allow me to be a full sensor for the reality of this company, to a method we call Holacracy now. And it's spreading all over the world. We use it in our own organization as well, HolacracyOne, that's doing a lot of the work to get this out there in the world. And I'm going to use HolacracyOne, the organization I work within, as an example to give you a taste of what this exquisite approach to organization is really all about. And one, just to frame, at HolacracyOne, there's no CEO. There's no bosses. There's no leaders. There is nobody that has the power to set your pay. There's no group of people that have the power to set your pay. It's actually the emergent result of a process that taps input from all sensors in the organization, and pay is an emergent result. Same with decisions to fire people. No one person holds that authority. No group holds that authority. This isn't just in name. This is actually legally grounded right down to our bylaws. There is no CEO. There are no leaders. There's not even any employees, technically. We have plenty of people that are doing the work of this organization, but they're not employees. They are, legally speaking, business partners. In U.S. tax code, that means they get a K-1 statement, not a W-2 statement at the end of the year. They have a legal voice in the governance of that organization. And that will continue being true as we grow. And at the same time, without bosses, without leaders, there's still very, very few group decisions. The vast majority of decisions made in this organization are made autocratically by one person with the full authority to make that decision on behalf of the organization. That's interesting. And there's no bosses, no leaders, yet there is autocratic authority. The difference is it's distributed. Right? That authority is distributed. Every partner that shows up in that organization has clarity on what their authority is in their roles and has the power to lead that role, power that nobody else can trump. It's a distributed power system, a distributed authority system. And along this journey, having been a heroic leader, holding all the power in an organization many times, one of the things I learned is the value of that. Right? There's a value in the alignment that that leadership brings. We need to not throw that out as we pioneer new approaches. And in our case here, we still have an amazing amount of integration and alignment. It's really, really quite incredible, at least to me, when I show up at work every day and have clear autocratic power, and so does everyone else around me, to use our best judgment and lead our roles. And yet, there's clear boundaries on where does my power stop, when do I need to integrate with somebody, how do I need to integrate with them, what can I expect of my coworkers, what can they expect of me. Right. So how do we do this? How do we get distributed authority without a leader to distribute it? Right? Without a feudal empire in place to delegate authority, how do you get a distributed authority system? Well, in a way that's not all that different from the governance that we're used to in our broader societies, we have a constitution. This document defines the power structure of our organization. And it is legally adopted in our bylaws. If need be, it's enforceable by the courts of Pennsylvania. This Constitution spells out how we work together, how we govern ourselves. It defines a governance process. Now, corporate governance is not a topic that most people find all that interesting. I find governance sexy as hell. Not as it's conventionally done, but I find it has tremendous potential. So let me talk a bit more about this. And we Americans have we're quite proud of our sometimes revolutionary democratic roots, right? So we have a phrase we'll hear sometimes in America, governance of the people, for the people, by the people. This is not that governance. This Constitution does not define a governance structure that is governance for the people, of the people, by the people. Rather, this governance structure is governance of the organization through the people for the purpose. We're not governing people. We're leaving people free to be fully themselves, fully human, and to lead their roles as they see fit. We're governing the organization. We're governing how we intersect. What are the expectations we can hold of each other? What can we count on each other for? How do we show up? Where's the limits of my authority so that I can lead my role confident in my authority, and yet I can be a good follower of your role with your authority? That's what we're governing, the organization. Through the people, we as censors, we are the instruments for this organization's reality. We help it unfold its journey in life. It's through the people for the purpose. We're not governing for our own sake. We're governing for the sake of expressing some purpose in the world. That's the governance process defined by this Constitution. And the cool thing about this, when you've got this level of transparency, when I want to know what authority do I have, or what authority does a colleague of mine have, or hey, here's a decision I think needs to get made. Who has the authority to make this decision for the organization? Well, I can't just go to a boss and ask. Not that that helps in a lot of organizations. How many organizations have crystal clear clarity on who can make which decisions within what limits, how, when, why? Right? When I want that clarity, I go to a nice little website, a little web application we've got that tells me exactly what I can expect of all of my coworkers, what can they expect of me, who has what authority, where are the bounds on that authority. It's all completely transparent. We even make it transparent to the rest of the world. It's linked from our website. So what this allows is the integration and alignment function without a heroic leader at the top delegating power and pulling all the strings together, which is I think, pretty important if we want a system where everybody can use their full capacity to sense reality, to be an instrument of this. Because if we're all channeling through a leader, we are constrained by the leader's capacity to see. Good luck processing something that your boss doesn't see. And this governance process has some real challenges to overcome here, at least we did in the development of it. It's not enough to give everybody a voice, right? Giving you a voice is not the same as actually allowing you to process whatever it is you sense into some kind of meaningful change. So we need some process to allow that to happen. And let me share with you a bit more about how this works and what it means. For one, let me be clear. When I say governance here, I think a lot of people think of a conventional governance process. It's some group decision-making process. That's not what I mean. So we had a question. Questions like, who's going to prepare our slides for the DO lectures? What slides should we use? What graphics should we use? These are not questions we answer in some group decision-making process in governance. The Constitution defines the authority structure to ask rather, who decides what slides we use? Who has the authority to do that for the organization? Within what constraints? What can I expect of that person? As the speaker, can I expect them to integrate my feedback? Can I direct them in what images I want? What? Where are the bounds of that authority? And I can go here and I can find it. So governance is about defining the meta structure, the meta pattern, which most organizations don't have an effective process to do, or a process at all in many cases. It's simply what emerges, or what the heroic leader ends up accidentally creating or changing. Here, we have a very different system. We have a system where you can consciously define that structure through a governance process defined by a constitution where everybody has a voice for the sake of processing what they sense into clarity of how we interconnect and what we need to expect of each other in order to express the purpose. This has a pretty interesting effect. When you show up in this environment and you're in a distributed authority system, you have authority, everyone has authority, there's no boss to go to, right? You're occasionally going to feel some tension. Right? Can you imagine everyone making different decisions, leading their roles? You're going to feel some tension sometimes. Tension about the way we work together, about what we need to expect of each other, or what's slipping through the cracks that needs to be paid attention to. So here's the really impactful thing, I think, for us personally. When we show up in this system and there's no boss to go to, when you feel some tension about the way things work, and you have no boss to go to, you have no heroic leader to jump in and save you, you have no villain to blame, because you have a voice in evolving the governance and a process defined to allow you to do that. So there's no villain to blame. There's no one to blame. There's just you. This is the bitch of this process, right? It's much easier to just hide and play the victim. And, yeah, that's the way things work around here, and I can't influence it. Or that's the boss. They just don't see it. Or to be the hero, right? To say, tell me your tensions. I'm going to be the good leader. And I'm going to be the good leader that saves you, the parental figure. This undermines all of those hiding places and simply holds up a mirror to reality, which is just, this is about you. You're the low voltage light. You're sensing something. What are you going to do about it? You have a process to go to if you need to be able to expect something, if you need to change the way things work around here. You have a governance process. You can process that into some kind of change in the structure. You have authority. Nobody can trump your authority. You have authority in your roles to lead, and a governance process to carve that out and define the boundaries between roles. There's nowhere to hide. There's just you. course, on the other side, what that also means is you get to use your full capacity. You get to take whatever it is you sense and have it harnessed, have it integrated. You get to lead your roles. And what I find about this process and the organizations we work with who use it, when this process holds up a mirror and it says, look, you don't get to play the victim. You don't get to hide. You have a voice. You have capacity. You sense something. What are you going to do about it? When it does that for somebody else, we love it, right? It's holding up that mirror for them, not letting them just take that stance. When it holds up the mirror for us, it really sucks. So for the organization, what this does, if every one of us can take these tensions we feel and change something with them, process them, when we can be that sensor for the organization's reality, we have a source of energy. Like a rubber band stretched between 2 points, there's energy there. And these tensions we sense are often clues. When we're holding an organization's purpose in mind, or the purpose of our piece of it, our role, and we feel some tension, it's often a clue to some gap between what is and what could be. If we can harness that gap, if we can use this process to close that gap, right, we have a source of energy that most organizations now, today, don't fully harness. How many organizations feel like they fully harness the capacity of anyone, anywhere in the company, to fully sense and process their world, to use their own consciousness? Because what is consciousness other than the ability to sense a tension, a gap between what is and what could be, and then to choose a response? So my journey has been, how can our organizations harness this as energy and for us humans allow us to fully process anything we sense? I know I've had a good day when I can go home and say, I was well used by reality today. Right? My capacities were well used by reality today. And wouldn't it be cool if our organizations could take all of us humans showing up within and well use all of us? I think that's pretty cool. So when the organization can harness this, can use this as a source of energy, what we get is an evolutionary process at work for the organization. Right? So if the organization can sense all of what all of us are sensing, can harness that, can integrate it, and can change how it's designed, that's pretty cool. We're actually redesigning the organization continually. And not just at the top. Remember, this governance process, every human gets to sense and participate. It's a distributed process. Every team everywhere in the organization is doing this governance process defined by this constitution. And they're doing it to shape the design of the organization. How do we work around here? Who has what authority? How do decisions get made? With what constraints? When we have that, no one of us is designing the organization. I think that's really interesting. This was really hard for me to get used to. As the heroic leader, right, in the past when I built companies and ran them, I got to design the organization. Maybe some of you have been in that position of getting to design the organization. In this process, no one person designs the organization. It is an emergent result of harnessing and processing everything everyone senses, constantly seeking better designs to better express the purpose through a governance process to hold all that and to get us there. That's pretty cool. What that does is allow evolution to be the designer of your organization. And the thing is, evolution is smarter than you, right? And I think I'm pretty smart, but I've had to face this fact. It was quite difficult. As smart as I am and as good as I am at coming up from my mind with beautiful designs for our organization, the reality is evolution is smarter than me. We will get a design process with purpose as our fitness function to seek the best design to express that purpose by processing all sensors fully. And this has a pretty cool result. When that's true, when there's this emergent organizational entity forming and shaping, using us but beyond us, we get something that feels beyond us. You know? We get to harness evolution as a designer and birth an organization. One which is dependent on us for sure. It's working through us, it's sensing through us. And yet it is an entity that is separate from any one of us. No one of us is fused with it. At least with time. Like all life, organizations start fused with their parent, with their founder. And yet the healthy process, like the parent's journey, is one of differentiating from their child. Helping the child find and express its own highest calling in the world. Helping the child tune in, what does the world need from you? And express that in the world. What I love about this process, each one of us within, not just me, every one of our partners, gets to show up and act as a steward, a caretaker for the organization. Gets to help raise this organization and help it find and express its highest calling in the world. That is why I'm really excited about Holacracy. So, thank you.